Have you ever asked for something and gotten, well, a puzzle you can't solve? That's pretty much exactly what happened when two homeowners decided to take on their HOA. It all started with a simple request that, believe it or not, sparked a 2-year legal battle over transparency, privacy, and the surprising power of a single word, reasonable. So here's the big question that this whole thing revolves around. How is it possible to get every single document you ask for, but end up with information that's completely useless? It sounds like a riddle, right? But this paradox is at the very heart of this case. And the answer? Well, it shines a light on a fascinating gray area in the law. I want you to just picture this for a second. You've asked to see the voting records for a pretty controversial election in your community. You show up, and the association hands you 2 stacks of paper. One stack has all the ballots. The other has all the envelopes, with the names and addresses. But here's the catch. They've been separated. You have all the pieces of the puzzle, but absolutely no way to connect a vote to a voter. And that's exactly the situation these homeowners found themselves in.
So, yeah, this weird delivery, it wasn't just confusing. It was basically the spark that lit the fuse on a full-blown legal fight.
Okay, so to really get how this all blew up, we need to meet the players on both sides of this thing. All right, so on one side, you've got the homeowners, Sandra Swanson and Robert Barnes. And what they wanted was pretty straightforward, to see the original ballots to make sure a recent vote was legitimate. On the other side, you have the Circle G Ranches HOA. They argue that they had to balance this request with their duty to protect the privacy of all their members. That right there, that fundamental tension, that's where this whole story really kicks off. And this wasn't some quick little disagreement that got sorted out of a weekend. Nope. The initial request was way back in January 2020. After they got those separated documents, the homeowners filed a legal petition that September, and a final decision didn't come down until February 2022. I mean, think about that. A full 2 years later, it's just a wild reminder of how a seemingly small dispute can really drag on. So what was the homeowners' legal leg to stand on? Well, it all boiled down to a pretty basic idea: their right to know. The homeowner's entire case, literally the whole thing, hung on this one little phrase from an Arizona law, which says that records have to be made reasonably available. And from where they were sitting, getting a bunch of useless, separated papers that you couldn't cross-reference was anything but reasonable. And this really gets us to the heart of the legal fight, right? What does reasonably available actually mean? Does it just mean they have to physically give you the papers? Or does it mean the information has to be provided in a way that's actually useful, a format that lets you, verify things? The whole case was basically a battle over defining that one single phrase. Their argument really boiled down to 4 key points. First off, separated documents are useless, so they aren't reasonably available. Simple. Second, this wasn't just some inconvenience. They argued it was an unlawful barrier to their right to inspect. Third, they pointed out that the HOA's whole secrecy argument was kind of weak because some people had actually signed their ballots. Which leads right into their final point. If people are signing votes, then there was no real expectation of privacy to begin with. All right, now let's flip the coin and look at the HOA's defense. Their whole position was built around one central idea. They had a duty to protect their members. The HOA's counterargument, it was actually pretty simple. They said, look, the law says we have to provide the records, but it doesn't say how. They were adamant they gave the homeowners 100% of the documents, but their main defense was that their method was a necessary compromise. The board was genuinely worried that if they just put everyone's votes out there, it could lead to neighbors harassing each other. For them, protecting the peace in the community was just as important as transparency. So there you have it. 2 really compelling arguments, right? The right to know versus the duty to protect. How on earth does a judge even begin to untangle that? Let's dive into the final ruling. The judge's ruling was super methodical. First, the judge said the HOA asking for an NDA was perfectly legal. Second, and this is the absolute key, the delivery method, those 2 separate stacks, was found to be reasonable given the situation. The judge basically said that since the homeowners got all the documents in the end, the HOA had met its legal duty. So at the end of the day, the homeowner's petition was denied. This one quote from the decision, it tells you everything you need to know. The judge straight up admitted the delivery method may have not been ideal, but the most important words are under the totality of underlying circumstances. That's basically judge speak for, hey, context matters. It shows the judge gave a lot of weight to the HOA's privacy concerns and saw their kind of clumsy solution as a reasonable try at balancing 2 competing responsibilities. Okay, so the judge made a call, case closed, right? Well, not exactly. The story doesn't really end there. Because what does this case actually mean for you or for anyone living in a community with an HOA? At the end of the day, this isn't just some weird story about one neighborhood in Arizona. It perfectly captures a fundamental challenge that exists in pretty much every community association out there. It's this constant tightrope walk between a homeowner's right to see the books and the board's duty to protect the privacy and maybe even the safety of all its members. This case just goes to show you there are no easy answers. So it really leaves all of us with a big question for our own communities. Where do you draw that line? How much transparency is enough? And at what point does it start to threaten the privacy that we all expect? It's a debate with no simple answer, and it's happening right now in neighborhoods everywhere.